Please welcome Amy Cooper.
Hello and welcome to our afternoon session. We're so glad that you're joining us today. And for today's session, we have divided up this 1 hour into two 30-minute segments. So first, we're going to hear from Ashley Still. And Ashley is the VP and GM of Adobe's Document Cloud and Creative Cloud. And so she's going to come and share a little bit about her journey and how she has achieved the position at Adobe that she has. However, what's interesting about her is that she is another California transplant. And she comes to us from the East Coast. I'm kind of curious out there, how many of you are from California, like natively? And how many of you are also transplants out there? Yeah, that's what I figured. There's a lot of us out here, and so Ashley definitely represents our numbers that way. And so we'd love to have her on stage and to share with us about her journey at Adobe. Thank you.
Hello, how are y'all doing today? Good, great weather, nice day. I'm happy to be here. So my name is Ashley Stone. As she said, I'm responsible for two of our business lines at Adobe, Document Cloud and Creative Cloud Enterprise. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And since today is really all about transformation and the profound transformation that we'd all like to see in the technology industry from a diversity and inclusion perspective, I thought I'd tell you the story of Adobe's transformation. And Adobe's actually, is anyone familiar with Adobe? What do you guys think of when you think Adobe? Yeah, oh, Flash, there you go, yeah. Acrobat, Photoshop, Flash, those are, anyone think of Lightroom? There's usually a couple Lightroom. So we clearly have a web developer, which is great. So yes, so Adobe has actually transformed quite a bit over the last 5 years. And not only is a great business transformation story and product transformation story, it's actually a great female leadership story as well, which I will get to. So go back with me to 2010. It's like games, Angry Birds was the biggest app, the social network just came out, just kind of get you. We all were worried about buying real estate. If you live in the Bay Area, we thought like maybe the real estate market would never come back, and now we're all regretting not buying more real estate in 2010. So that's where we were, and Adobe, while we'd been successful for 30 years and had these iconic products like Photoshop and Acrobat and incredibly high customer satisfaction, it was actually really dark days for Adobe. And we had these what I think of as three strong headwinds for our business hit all around the same time. A couple had been growing for a while, and then it was exacerbated by the third. So the first is we had a product development model and a business model that was increasingly constraining our innovation. And if you're in technology and you hear the words constrained and innovation in the same sentence, you immediately break out in a cold sweat. And that's because we had 18-month development cycles, which is totally normal in the history of technology, but not normal for the next 30 years. Customers expect rapid innovation, the market expects rapid innovation, and all of your competitors are absolutely investing in rapid innovation. And then also we had a perpetual business model. So we couldn't ship other than every 18 months because we would have had to defer all of our revenue to the end of that 18-month cycle. So we would have had to say, sorry, Wall Street, we just shipped a new feature in Photoshop. Just kidding about everything that we booked for the last 6 months since the last release. We're gonna take all that revenue and recognize it in another year. So obviously that doesn't tend to go over well. And so that meant that we didn't ship big features other than at big releases, or we had to create new SKUs to ship features, which is also kind of mind-boggling at this point. And the second thing is, while our existing customers were extremely happy, and we had done an amazing job of winning over designers and video editors and photographers and all of these categories that Adobe has become a leader in over the last 25 years, and with Acrobat, et cetera, we had gotten to the end of that, right? Like we had kind of exhausted our core addressable market, and our products were priced extremely high. So It costs $600 to buy Photoshop. You don't, run out to Stanford Mall and, do that lightly. And if you wanted to buy all of our applications, it was $2,500. And of course, it was a one-time payment. You had to have all of that money up front. And so our customer base wasn't expanding past our core. So our core was really happy, but we weren't expanding past that. And then the 2008 recession hit, and our creative core base was very hard hit by the recession. Advertising pulled back, media and entertainment pulled back, which of course meant our revenue dramatically pulled back. No one upgraded, right? Those critical upgrades for a software company at that time like Adobe, they just didn't materialize. And so our stock price hit a low of, it actually went under $20 in 2011. It had been as high as like 60 or 80. And then we looked around and our peers were actually less hard hit than us. We had 17% recurring revenue. Autodesk had 47, Intuit had 56, Microsoft had 60. And that's part of why we were so hard hit, is because our revenue dipped more than our peer companies. So all of these things meant that we had to change, right? Like, it was not optional. And one of the great things about transformation, or one of the great catalysts of transformation, is getting to a point where everybody recognizes the need to change, even though a lot of the signs may have been there for a while. And a testament to our leadership is that we did change. We fundamentally said, we're going to do business differently, we're going to develop products differently, we're going to embrace a different business model, and we don't know if it's going to work. And of course, I'm going to show you a slide, and I'm still at Adobe, and it all worked, and we've done great over the last 5 years. But of course, that wasn't clear at the time, right? And so there was a great leadership saying, we're going to do this, and if we are going to do it, the leadership needs to be the most invested people at the company behind this transformation. So the plan centered around 3 pillars. The first is we needed to reinvigorate growth through innovation. You have to innovate at the pace of modern technology. And funny enough, other than I work mostly on the application side of the business, Acrobat and our design products, again, like Photoshop and Illustrator, but we also have a whole digital experience and digital transformation part of our business, web analytics, web content management, et cetera. And we're working with the world's biggest companies on their digital transformation. And so a lot of the lessons that we were talking to our customers about with their digital transformation, we actually were kind of bringing back into the company as well. So we knew our customers wanted to design for mobile and cloud. We knew that mobile is going to disrupt or enable and open up new opportunities for everything, that people are going to expect software to inherently be collaborative. That they're going to expect AI to make mundane, repetitive tasks a thing of the past, right? So we knew all these things, but in order to really take advantage of them, we had to make 3 giant constraints go away. One, our channel disintermediation. We sold most of our application products through channel distributors, and we still have a great relationship with our distributors, but we didn't have a lot of data, right? If you're going to delight your customers and make sure you're on the edge of the bleeding edge of innovation, you need a lot of knowledge and understanding about how your customers buy, how your customers use your products, et cetera. And that disintermediation was hurting us. Second, our perpetual revenue model, as I talked about, and our 18-month release cycles. So we obviously had to change those things and be willing to change them. And then we needed to figure out a way to expand our customer base and lower the cost of entry and the barriers, both from a price perspective as well as from a product complexity standpoint. And really both are reasons for barriers in our case. And then last, we had to regain investor confidence. We were really trading as a margin stock. We had 50% margins, and I'm happy to say we're actually back to having almost 50% margin. But obviously, it is a lot more interesting to be valued for growth than to be valued for margin over the long term. So we announced Creative Cloud and that we're going to shift our desktop applications to really be SaaS applications over time, right? You weren't all of a sudden gonna upload your gigabit files to the cloud and work on them in Photoshop. It's similar to Office 365 model, where there's a mix of desktop applications, but infused with cloud services, with mobile applications, and with other standalone services as well. So we announced this at the end of 2011, and we shipped it in May of 2012, so we did it quickly, and I'll talk about that. We relaunched Adobe.com with a commitment to being a world-class e-commerce destination where we could really understand everything we possibly could about our customers and be close to our customers, understand why they bought, what they bought, how they retained, how they used our products, et cetera. And actually now more than 50% of our business is done through Adobe.com, which is pretty amazing. I'm still kind of amazed by that myself. And we also made a commitment to be affordable. So you can now buy our photography products for $10 a month. So $600 to $10 a month. When we did a trial of the subscription model before moving forward with it, it actually expanded our customer base 38%. And the most expensive offer is now $50 a month. So even if you're a professional designer, it went from needing to figure out how to come up with $2,500 to buy Adobe's products to $50 a month as part of your business expenses. And then we dramatically changed our product offering. I talked a little bit about this. We have now, even if you're in the desktop application, a lot of what you're doing is likely using some sort of cloud service, even though you are working with a desktop application. We acquired a social company called Behance that's kind of a LinkedIn for creatives and integrated that into our products. We enabled people to publish their portfolios online directly from our products. And it's great. So we were able to add so much more customer value and in different ways and expand to how we help our customers accomplish what they're trying to accomplish by making this shift. And I kind of grew up doing product management for a long time, and something that was near and dear to my heart is we shipped all the time. So from where I started at Adobe in 2004 and watching things kind of sit on the shelf until a release was going out the door, it was amazing to watch 1,000 features ship when ready over the first 3 years. And this was really hard to do. We made a ton of mistakes. And the good thing is we learned quickly from them, and I'll talk about some of the lessons that we learned at the end. And now we're doing the same thing with Document Cloud. So taking Acrobat from really a desktop, offline product to being mobile and cloud-centric. We now have hundreds of millions of users of our Acrobat or mobile reader on both Android and iOS. So if you don't have it, download it. It's a fantastic application. We created a new mobile app called Scan. So now your phone is a scanner. You never need to go find a scanner. And increasingly, you can fill things out and sign them all on your mobile. So I don't know about you, I have kids. I have umpteen forms and all sorts of stuff coming to me all the time. And now Adobe can help you solve that problem where we never would have thought about solving that problem in the past. So one of the great things and one of the themes that comes out of this is when you embrace transformation and you go through these difficult changes, it really opens up a wealth of opportunity in how you think about your company, how you think about the value that you provide to your customers, and of course, business opportunities. So where's Adobe today? This is the good part of the story. The first slide was the potential doom and gloom. So we now have 25%. We're in single-digit revenue growth in 2010, and now we've maintained 25% plus revenue growth over the last 5 years. Our stock price is now 10x'd from that time and is now trading around $230. I think it's even a little bit higher than that today. Again, we've introduced thousands of new capabilities for our customers. And the last reported, we stopped publicly giving our customer base numbers, but we went from a few million at the height of our Creative Suite desktop application to the last publicly reported number we gave was 10 million. So we dramatically expanded our customer base. So this is all, obviously, this is a good decision, right? This is a good transformation to go through. And again, it was hard, and we're still going through it, right? We still are not at the point that we want to be at from a technology perspective, from a operating model perspective. There are things that we want to do around commerce and making that better for our customers, but obviously it's been successful thus far. And there are really 5 key lessons that we learned as part of this transformation. So first is to read the tea leaves. And every leader needs to look around corners. It's kind of one of the things that our CEO, Shantanu Narayan, talks about all the time, that he expects from leadership is people who can't just see today, but can see tomorrow and help the company respond to what's happening tomorrow. And of course, if you wait to really see the effects of disruption, it's very hard to act in time. I think if there's one regret we all have is that we didn't do this sooner, because it really took those 3 kind of headwinds coming together at the same time for Adobe for us to really galvanize around making this change. There had been subscription model trials for a number of years at Adobe prior, and that was what was the recession plus these other headwinds is what galvanized us around the change. Customers expect to see recurring value. I'm out with customers all the time, and I cannot imagine customer conversations where you would give them value kind of once a year or once every other year, because of course that's just not the pace of innovation these days. So the second is, don't be held back by your past success, right? And this is the quintessential innovator's dilemma. And you really could see that play out at Adobe. And the way that we all thought about it was, if we were starting our business today, what products would we have and what business model would we have? What would you do today? And how do you make sure that you're not, normal businesses, they need to optimize for the way that your customers buy from you today, right? And from the way that your products work today. And so it's very hard to make these gigantic shifts, because a lot of your employees and actually a lot of your customers are saying, but hold on, wait, I like to buy from you the way that I buy from you today, or I like your products being offline. That's what I'm used to. And so if you carry those vestiges with you, where clearly so much has changed, that were you to start the business again today, you would do something different, and there's a dichotomy between those two things, that's where you really need to sit down and really think about whether you need a fundamental transformation of your business. And along those lines, the conversation really changed when we went from saying, I can't do this because our revenues will fall. Because obviously when you go from perpetual to subscription, you actually have to hold back all the revenue and recognize it over time. So your revenue goes down a lot at first, particularly if you're doing it fast. So, that was a big hurdle. How are you going to explain to Wall Street, how are you going to explain to customers, how are you going to explain to employees that it's healthy and normal for revenue to go down for 3 years? And the conversation went from, we can't do this because how do you explain revenue going down, to it's okay if revenue goes down in the short term, we're just going to communicate. And we're going to explain why. We can tell the vision of where we're going and why we're going to do this. So this is kind of one of my favorite ones, is burn the boats. And do all of you know that reference, the burn the boats? It's kind of, think Vikings, right? Vikings would go out on their quests, and when they would get to where they were going, they would actually burn the boats so people couldn't go back, right? They had to commit. You have to stay. There's no way out. And along the way, there were definitely people that wanted to turn back. There were employees there were customers, and so we made the announcement that we were not going to sell perpetual software anymore. I mean, we made it publicly. And the only way you could find perpetual was, on the back door of adobe.com. And so we did it really quickly, and we were firm that we were not going to go back. And so this also meant, because we were going to do it quickly, there were really hard investment decisions. right? There were products that we divested of because we needed to shift those resources into supporting this transformation. We also, one thing that was personally, challenging for me is I'm responsible for our enterprise customers, and we actually started with individuals because it's easier. Deploying SaaS applications in enterprise, you have to have all sorts of deployment capabilities, and identity works a different way, and if you work in this part of the industry, you know what I mean. And so we actually had to tell enterprise customers that it was going to be a while before. So some of our biggest customers, we had to tell them they had to wait for all of this new value that we were creating, which were absolutely not easy conversations. And there were definitely moments it was good that we didn't have the boats on the shore waiting for us to carry us back to where we were. And then, you have to rethink everything. This is not just a business model change or a product change. It really changes the way the entire company works. I mean, we were down to talking about what meeting structures we needed to have versus the old meetings that we had. How do you run the business with a subscription model versus the type of model that we had? And this is actually one of the most rewarding things too, just a little anecdote. On the product side, our applications have been desktop forever, right? Offline desktop applications. And seeing the light bulbs go off in both product managers and engineers' heads of what's possible when all of a sudden our software is connected to the internet was amazing. So, for example, if you're a designer, you use a lot of images and fonts and colors, et cetera, and it's really tedious to work with all those assets, and it's tedious to change them. And so a team came up with an idea of creating basically a cloud style guide so that you could put all of these assets in the cloud and link them to all of the designs. So if you had to change 30 designs from red to blue, instead of taking hours or weeks, it took minutes. And so things like that just wouldn't have been possible with the way that our products worked before. And seeing kind of teams evolve into understanding what was now possible and what they could build and what value they could deliver with customers is still incredibly rewarding. And then lastly, probably the most important thing was transparency. And again, this is one of the things that our CEO talks about all the time is how much he needed to communicate and how much we needed to communicate to employees and customers and Wall Street. And a lot of it was repetitive. They say that some people need to hear things 6 to 10 times in order to really understand it and commit to it. And there was a lot of transparency. There were a lot of employee meetings. We were extraordinarily transparent with our customers. There were meetings on the weekends with customers. The photography community in particular really needed to understand this change and understand how it was going to impact them. And so I really think the company rose to the occasion in terms of transparency and communication. And not everybody stayed. A lot of leaders and employees who didn't agree left. And sometimes that's okay. The level of commitment needed to make this change was significant. And so if you look at all this, women played a really important leadership role. So Kathleen Ramirez reports to our CFO and runs all of finance for all of our application business. And so she basically was responsible for the model that transitioned us from desktop to cloud. And Mala Sharma, she is effectively the general manager of a lot of this part of the business. And she also led the strategy for how we were going to take customers and what the experience on Adobe.com was going to be and helped lead us and guide us through this transition. Chris Hall was actually a new hire that was brought in to fundamentally transform our support organization into a true customer success organization. And she has a great sense of humor, which she definitely needed for this initiative or transformation. And then Jamie Myrold runs design for the whole company and obviously has been instrumental in evolving that organization from designing desktop applications to designing services and workflows. And then, of course, our CMO, Ann Lunas, who evolved all of our go-to-markets and how we do lead gen and how we think about our brand and how we think about supporting our customers. And then, of course, Donna, who is EVP of HR and really led a lot of leadership transformation, a lot of the change management across the company, et cetera. CIO. I was responsible at that point in time for the enterprise side on the Creative Cloud and now Document Cloud. And then Maria Yap, who runs both product and engineering for one of the most iconic software products that's been at the core of this transformation. So for us, it's great to have this diversity as the part of the way that we do business, and I think a great part of the story. So now, really, we feel like the world is in front of us, right? It's less about how do we align our business model to our innovation, and it's really all about innovation and AI and new applications. I mean, we've now launched, even in the last couple of years, we've now launched 5 completely new creative applications for screen design, for hobbyist photography. And so we see this as just opening up a new era of innovation at Adobe and enabling us again to go in so many different directions where there's market opportunity and customer value that we can create. And it's a really exciting time to be part of Adobe. So with that, I actually do have some time for questions, so I can probably take 2 or 3 questions. So the first hand to go up is in the back. I don't know if there's a mic.
Hi there, my name's Rosemary.
Hi.
How did you transform the workforce? That was a lot of change. You had a lot of change with your customers. How did you bring the employees along?
Yes, great question. So there were a lot of both formal all hands as well as informal kind of one-on-ones and meeting with teams, et cetera. So a lot of it was, and then there was also formal training, like for engineers. We've gone through cycles of doing formal training around cloud services. That was the first round. You have extremely talented engineers who, for just decades potentially, have worked on desktop software. And so they're capable of being great cloud engineers, but they need that training. So that was the first round. Now we've been doing that around AI and making sure that every single engineer at Adobe goes through AI and ML training. And that's the next wave that's really exciting to see people really embracing AI and ML and finding practical uses of that technology to solve customer problems. Go ahead.
So your VP suite that you showed seems not just,
Hi, my name's Allison.
Yes.
So your VP suite seems not just to have a good number of women, but very diverse women.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, is that how it always looked, and how did that transformation take place? Were a lot of them kind of like grown within the company, brought in from outside?
Yeah.
How did that impact things?
So, it's a good mix. Adobe is a company that tends to have a lot of tenure. It's a great place to work, so people like to stay there. I've been there for almost 14 years. Mala has also been there probably about the same amount of time. Kathleen has been there a long time, but Cindy is relatively new. She's been there in the last probably 3 years, and 8. So I think really, I think Adobe is a place where, yes, it is a place where you can grow your career through the ranks, but it is a mix of both bringing talent in from the outside as well as developing talent. And there was no quota put in place, right? I do think Adobe is a place where diverse perspectives and diverse approaches can thrive. And I like to think that that is one of the reasons why you see the results that you see.
was it always like that?
So the question was it always like that? I mean, if you go back a long time, probably not. But in the recent past, yes. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Maya. I was wondering if you could talk about the decision-making process, because what I've seen in a lot of companies, it's not the lack of ideas, but it's the process of how those ideas bubble up, and then how that decision is made to do that shift. If it's like a dictator makes the decision, is it a committee-based? Maybe you can describe that process.
Absolutely. And so the process is really evolving, right? I do think when you're going through something as extreme in a way that we went through. I mean, obviously, your CEO and ops staff, that's what we call our the group of people that reports to the CEO, and our ops staff, they have to be driving a decision like, do we change our business model, right? And of course, working with the board. That being said, so those board and CEO level decisions were obviously made there. At the beginning part of the transformation, it was a pretty small group that was making a lot of the initial decisions because it was so different and happening so fast that you almost couldn't scale it, right? It would be, one of the other interesting things is we did not bring in consultants. We did not do a 2-year technology build to change out our infrastructure. Like, we just figured out how can we get started. And then as you went through the transformation, it was kind of waves of going back to distributed decision making. As kind of everybody had that increased awareness and understanding of what we now are, right? And I do think that there were these, you can almost see phases of the organization's understanding of what our product set now is, how we operate as a company, and it's getting back now to a much more kind of normal course of business where you have individual product people coming up with ideas for capabilities that's not going up to a VP. But for a while, for probably the first year, it was fairly central. Yeah. Great, so thank you so much. I'll be here for a little while after. I'm happy to answer any other questions after. Thank you.